Thank you so much for coming. I wish there were a few more of you, but it's great that there's some of you here. So what we're going to do, well, first of all, we're going to introduce ourselves, and then I'll explain what comes next. I'm going to have Gary introduce himself first, since he's kind of the senior member of our...
Good evening. Thanks, everybody, for coming. It'd be nice if there was more people here, because this is a chance for us to just explain where we are so far and how we got here and stuff. And I see Marty Farrell's here. He was on the county board years ago, and actually our county board chair. So this is something we've talked about for a long time. Kat will touch on, the land was purchased in 21, but Al Beekle brought this to the county board to buy in 21, and Sheriff Mick Fink, I serve on the Public Safety Committee in Fond du Lac County. I'm in my 14th year on the county board. I was a mayor here for 10 years. Al Beekle actually got me to run for the county board in 2012, and it's a 2-year term, so I've been running ever since. So Mick Fink had talked about this for a long time too at our committee meetings, every other month when we'd meet him and stuff. So it's something that's been in discussion for a long time at Fond du Lac County, and we'll just get into more of that when we're talking about that. But I am running again for this next year, so I'm going to do one more term, I think, for sure. I'm going to plan on. I'm not going to hang around forever. I think some people hang on too long, but do what I can. And with this sheriff project or jail project going on, I kind of wanted to hang around. Like say, Al Beekle brought this to us to purchase back in 21, and I kind of want to try to see this through, seeing that I've been around long enough and part of the discussion with all this going forward. So thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. I'm Kat Griffith. I'm finishing up my second term on the board, and I also plan to run again. Let me explain what we're going to do tonight. We're going to start by getting an overview of the jail process up until now and kind of the process going forward. Then we're going to do some background information, which is the most common concerns that I've been hearing from constituents and others. Then we're going to do a Q&A, which is where you guys just ask questions. That would not be the moment to weigh in on your opinions yet, just questions. And then the final part will be a listening session where we want to hear from you about what you care about, what is most important to you. So what I hope to accomplish with this tonight, speaking for myself, my hope is that you, my constituents and others, can come to a shared understanding so that we are in alignment with how to proceed. I want my input into this county board process to reflect your values and priorities, and for you to understand as much as possible about the choices that we face. You need information about this project, and I need information about what you want. That's why I'm here tonight. So I hope that as a result of this evening, you will be able to weigh in productively on this. If your input is based on inadequate information, it won't be very valuable to the board. But hopefully with the overview that you're going to get, you can refine your questions, and we can all focus on the key issues that really matter to you and that we can do something about. So I'm going to start with I think I'm one ahead here. I'm going to start with just explaining the exploration and decision-making process so far. So problems with the jail, as Gary mentioned, led to the county's purchasing the land out at the Highway Department. That's the Scott Road site, to eventually build a new jail. That was in 2021 that the board voted to do that. In the summer of 2024, an ad hoc jail committee of 9 with county board supervisors and community members was appointed. I was on this committee, and the committee met from August of 2024 until February of 2025. The things that we explored were problems with the current jail. There were many. Codes and standards and types of designs, the Justice Center concept, and everything out at Scott Road. So when I talk about the Justice Center concept, what I mean is putting a jail, the courts, the sheriff's office, juvenile detention, all that stuff together out at one new place. Right now, they're all pretty much together downtown. The idea is to possibly recreate that outside at the Scott Road site. The Scott Road site is the one next to the Highway Department, so when I refer to that, that's what I'm talking about. We also looked at the possibilities for staying downtown, the options and constraints. We ended with a slate of options for both locations, all with a 450-bed jail, with costs ranging from $260 to $392 million. Eventually, there was a majority, but not a consensus, to recommend the Justice Center concept. That was the $392 million option. let's see. So we went from those deliberations to this next part, which was the county board got a presentation at that point, laying out what had been learned and explored, and what the ad hoc committee's recommendation was. One supervisor pointed out that bonding for that amount would make us the most indebted county in the state by a very large margin. I will return to that. Next, the Public Safety Committee, chaired by Gary here, and the Highway Department began meeting jointly to bring a recommendation to the county board. After a few meetings, they voted to recommend an RFP, which is a request for proposals, I'll explain that in a moment later, for a phased approach to the Justice Center by the Highway Department at Scott Road. So the phased approach was the idea that we would do it, start with maybe just the jail, and expand from there over time as finances and need permitted. Financial concerns had made the Justice Center concept seem too ambitious, but a phased approach, building in stages, could allow us to get there eventually. So this RFP, the request for proposals, was to invite architectural firms to bid on the design phase of the project. They would present their plans for plans, and we would choose from among the firms. Planning a huge project like this is in itself a complex and expensive proposition, hence the need for a competitive bidding project to choose a design firm. So, you with me so far? Okay. So then the resolution to do this RFP, this request for proposals, inviting the design bids, was considered at the contentious county board meeting in December. Probably some of you heard about that. The initial resolution was to invite plans for only the Scott Road site. In the end, the resolution was amended to require bidders to come up with plans for both sites, downtown and the Scott Road site. A number of supervisors were unwilling to commit to the Scott Road site without more consideration of downtown options and their costs and benefits. Many of us wanted to be able to compare. The amended resolution passed on a 14-10 vote, and the RFP proceeded. On Monday of this week, the Executive Committee of the County Board met to hear presentations from the top 3 bidders. I was there, as was Gary. The Executive Committee recommended one firm based on a combination of their experience, their knowledge of our specific circumstances, and cost. Yeah.
Just to back up just a second, Kat had talked about the ad hoc committee. So the ad hoc committee had a recommendation at their time a year ago when it was presented to the county board, and their recommendation was the Scott Road site. And then our committee met joint with Highway, and the recommendation was unanimous also there too to recommend the Scott Road site. And as Kat just mentioned, then at the December county board meeting, that was changed to include both sites. Now we will be paying, we actually just voted, we didn't vote this Monday, but it's going to the county board next week to look at both sites, which will cost additional money for plans because we're looking at both sites. But then we'll actually know the real dollars and cents to each project and what it's going to cost to operate each project, because there's a lot of operating costs that go along with one versus the other. Thank you.
So the next steps will be for the next steps will be for the relevant committees and the county board to vote on awarding a design contract to that firm, which will probably happen. The contract will include the requirement that they design 2 projects, the phased Justice Center project out at the Scott Road site, where we start with perhaps just the jail, or some people have suggested the jail and maybe 1 courtroom, but design it so that later phases can be added according to need and finances. The second project is a plan for the downtown site in which we continue to use the existing courts and sheriff's office and related infrastructure, but add a new 450-bed jail in a parking lot just south of the current jail. There's also likely to be a companion resolution to hire a jail sizing consultant to further investigate the jail population that we need to build for. The 450-bed size could thus be modified depending on what the consultant comes up with. Once we approve an architectural firm, they will provide schematic designs for both sites. Once we have 2 plan options, 2 things are going to happen. One will be several public information and listening sessions to inform and get input from the community. The other is that the county board will need to authorize borrowing. 19 of 25 supervisors have to approve a bond issue. That is a high bar, and we're going to have to work hard to meet it. This is going to set the maximum cost of the project that we can undertake. Okay, deep breath. Are you with me so far? Are there any quick factual questions or clarifications that I can make about the process up until now? Or do you have a quick question for Gary?
How many architects or planners are bidding at this time?
There were 6 who bid. There were 3 who presented to those of us who showed up, the executive committee. All of them did a good job. All of them were credible and had different strengths. And the one that was chosen, I mean, I guess it's okay to say that this is a recommendation only so far?
Yeah.
Or do you want to explain it?
Actually, there were 6, and the county executive and director of administration and Kurt from our consultant, they actually went through all 6 of those, and then they recommended 3 of them to us to talk about this last Monday. So they went through all 6 of them first, and then the 3 that were chosen, Marty, were actually presenting to us on Monday.
Thank you. Any other questions about the process so far? Okay. Welcome. You know, a couple people have walked in who I would like to have introduce themselves. There's several county board supervisors here, so if you want to just say who you are, that would be great.
I'm Mary Beth Hayes. I represent District 24 in the city of Fond du Lac.
I'm John Rickard. I represent District 13, being the Tachita area.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay. So the next part that I'm going to do here, I'm going to say, by way of introduction, in Campbellsport, they did a public information session that lasted 2.5 hours with slideshows and presentations about the current jail, its inhabitants, its programs, its problems, etc. I think this is worthy information. I would like to bring it to Ripon if there's interest, but tonight we're going to do things a little differently because I want to give you all plenty of time to ask questions and share your thoughts. So, and before, oops, wait a second. Sorry, okay. Before we go into Q&A, this is going to be a background information part. I'm just going to address the concerns that I've heard most often, both from constituents who've reached out to me and from the public comments given at a listening session in Fond du Lac organized by Supervisor Mary B. Hayes a few weeks ago. My hope is that by addressing some of these concerns up front, you can hone your questions for the Q&A. And once we've answered as many of your questions as we can, your final comments will be your remaining concerns that we should try to find out about and find a way to address. Note that I am not going to talk about the downtown versus Scott Road site in these comments because both options remain in play, and we can make a final decision when we have a much more complete cost information. There will be public meetings at that point to educate the public of the options and get input. So here goes with the biggest concerns. The first one is our jail really that bad? My short answer is, actually, I think so. It's true that our only violations with the Department of Corrections involve inadequate staffing. We have not been cited for any building deficiencies. However, I have toured the jail a couple of times, and I've seen presentations on its many problems and deficiencies, and I am persuaded that, yes, we need a new one. If there's sufficient interest, I would be glad to set up a whole presentation devoted to the condition of the current jail and the issues that we have there. It's a little bit beyond the scope of what we can do tonight, I think, with our limited time. So I would love to hear from you if you would like that information forward. I think it's perfectly legitimate to question whether we need to do this at all. I absolutely honor that question. My personal opinion is, yeah, we do. But we haven't decided whether we can completely ditch the old jail and dump it and not use it at all, or whether we can continue to use it. That question remains in play as well. Yeah.
As Kat was just mentioning, and earlier when she mentioned something, any information that Kat's talking about, any meetings, that stuff is all on the county's website. You can look at every and any meeting that we've talked about, discussed anything about, and what she just mentioned is the jail and condition of the jail. You can actually go on the site and you can see the DOC, Department of Corrections, every year, their report, they go through and deficiencies and things they find. It's all public information. Anybody can go on there and see that. You can see the report as what Kat's just talking about, deficiencies and stuff and things that they're, I don't want to say letting us get by with, but they're working with us. As long as we're working towards something, doing something, they're not going to tell us we have to cut our inmate down and start shipping them all over the state. So that's all public information out there right now. Anybody can see.
Thank you. Okay. My next slide here and the several are actually thanks to Supervisor Hayes here. The cost estimates that we have range from $260 million to $392 million for different versions of the project. There may eventually be versions that are not included in those estimates, but that's what we have right now. I'm going to briefly show you the debt implications of the proposed $400 million Justice Center. So this first graph is a comparison of Fond du Lac County property tax rates with the surrounding counties. The first graph shows the current reality of our tax rate compared to the other counties. We're the red line that's higher than all but Green Lake. If you go to the second graph, it shows where we would be in relation to these counties if we had a $400 million jail project. So you can see we would be higher than any of the surrounding counties.
Now, those numbers are what? What are those bars?
Those are property tax rate per $1,000
The
of.
mill rate?
Yeah, that's the mill rate. So we're up close to $5 per $1,000 of property currently. And if we were to do this $400 million project, we'd be up at about $650.
What are the other counties other than Green?
It's Winnebago, Outagamie, Manitowoc, Sheboygan, Dodge, Washington, and Green Lake. So this is just comparing us to neighboring counties. This shows the percentage of allowable debt used by Wisconsin counties. So we are constrained by statute in how much debt we're allowed to take on as counties. As you can see, most of us are well below what we're statutorily allowed to do. Some counties have basically no debt. We are, sort of upper end of average, I would say, where we are, where that red line there. That's our current situation. If we were to bond for a $400 million project, we would be twice as high as the next highest state in terms of the percentage, county, in terms of the percentage of allowable debt used by us. We would be up at about 85% of our bonding capacity. Nobody wants to go that high. That's a very, very high number. So I'm very grateful that Mary B. did this analysis. This third one shows per capita debt. Again, if you look at that top graph, we're sort of on the high end of normal average. If we were to bond for $400 million, our per capita debt would be about twice as high as the per capita debt of the next highest county, which is Trempealeau. So, I think there is widespread agreement that we simply cannot do this. And the only way the Justice Center concept is still in play is as a future possibility to keep open, like with the phased approach that we start with just the jail. The question is, what can we afford? At what point do people start leaving the county or deciding not to settle here? At what point does it become impossible for our school districts to pass referendums? If we're struggling to pay for adequate staffing at our current jail, that is what we've been dinged by the DOC, how will we afford to operate a substantially larger jail? At what point does our jail project crowd out other needed investments? What will we cut to pay for a bigger jail? I don't know the answers, but these are absolutely fair questions. I can promise you that I will not vote for a $400 million project, and I don't think one is going to be brought to the board. I think vanishingly few people could vote for that. I also believe that doing nothing is not an option. So, let's focus our conversation on what we can afford. One potentially useful factoid here is that a 150-bed jail housing pod, according to the consultants that have worked with us so far, is estimated to cost $45 million. So that's for 150 beds, $45 million. We're talking most often about a 450-bed jail. So I'll be glad to get your thoughts on this when we get to our listening session. The next thing that I've heard from a lot of people is, Do we really need 450 beds? There are a few things to understand about jail populations and sizing. So jails have to be built for prisoner classification systems. Prisoners can only be housed with others of the same classification, genderhood, likelihood of violent behavior, that kind of thing. They also have to be separated from any partners in crime and victims. The big dorms that we built several decades ago to house lots of inmates together cheaply no longer work. With more classifications, we need smaller units. Our current jail cannot be retrofitted for this. We're told that there's no way to add the required walls. Currently, our jail has relatively few inmates in large areas intended to be shared by many more people. This is a major reason that we need to build more jail. We just can't put that many in the one that we have because of the classification system that prevents people from being housed together. Another thing is that regulations define a jail's capacity as 85% of its actual bed count. This is to ensure that classifications can be followed correctly and that there is room for peak load. A degree of what may look like overbuilding is thus pretty much required. Our current jail has 325 beds. It is approved for 285 inmates, and we currently average over 300 a day. We currently have about 20 housed in Green Lake because we can't fit them all. We also regularly ask for exceptions to classification rules to be able to fit a few more people in. The 450 number is an educated professional estimate. I will say that a condition of my support for the new jail is that we hire a jail sizing expert to more deeply investigate this issue. A resolution to do so is likely to be forthcoming. The next question that I've heard from a lot of people is, who are we locking up, and do they really need to be in jail? This is certainly one of my questions, but I do want to dispense with a few common misperceptions. The sheriff has a very interesting presentation on who is in our jail. And I believe from having watched that and talked with him and looked at a bunch of different things, I think it's harder today than it might have been in the past to identify large categories of people who perhaps don't need to be there. For example, last week, only 2 of 290 inmates were in solely for drug charges. Inmates with multiple charges might have low-level drug charges among them, but nobody is in jail just for something like marijuana possession. We do not lock people up for that anymore. We have many people on ankle bracelets being monitored for drug and alcohol use. They're not in jail either. Only 2% of inmates were in jail for solely nonviolent or property crimes like high-level retail theft, identity theft, disorderly conduct, etc. When we say high-level retail theft, we're talking there are actually organizations that specialize in large-scale retail theft. They come through and do massive operations, things like that. According to the sheriff, the other 98% of our inmates had victims or committed violence or were otherwise threatened public safety. This next one is really important. 75% of our current inmates were out on probation or parole at some point, but they violated terms or committed a new crime and wound up back in jail. These are repeat offenders, and it's the probation and parole officers, not county employees, who make decisions about their incarceration. The final thing is that nonviolent offenders are rarely jailed pre-conviction. They're almost always allowed out on bail, and many don't serve post-conviction jail time either if they're truly nonviolent offenders. Another question I get a lot is, are our courts and DA's office and other programs functioning in ways to minimize jail time for as many people as is safely possible? I hear different views on this. A retired judge and the public defender's office think there is some low-hanging fruit that we have not picked. For example, the data show that our criminal cases take longer than in other counties, and that we have a large number of jury trials compared to other counties. Both of these patterns drive up our jail population and could perhaps be addressed with changes in the DA's office and elsewhere. We are also housing a lot of people, they are nearly a third of our jail population, from out of county who have committed offenses elsewhere, but we're the ones jailing them for offenses they committed here. It's not a good deal for Fond du Lac County to be paying to jail criminals from other counties. I am not an expert in any of this, but what I hear makes me think that we have options to explore besides building a much bigger jail. Another question that I hear a lot is, wait a second. Oh, I'm sorry, on the same one. We also lack a criminal justice coordinating council. 61 out of Wisconsin's 72 counties have one. These councils include representatives from just about every entity involved in criminal justice. Together, they address the overall functioning of the system and look for synergies and efficiencies. At its best, a criminal justice coordinating council can foster exactly the kind of collaboration and shared problem solving needed to address things like those issues that I just mentioned. I'm encouraged that I've heard multiple public calls in the last week alone from citizens, a jail consultant we're thinking of hiring, and a retired judge to create a CJCC. In the last month, I have talked with the judges, the public defender's office, and the sheriff about it, and they are all at least modestly positive about the idea. I think this could perhaps get off the ground in the coming year, but its impacts will take a while to be felt. And I can't guarantee it's going to get off the ground. I hope. I will work for it, but I don't know. In the meantime, we still have a jail sizing decision to make. Another question that I hear a lot is, are we offering enough alternatives to incarceration? Are we devoting enough effort to things like drug treatment and sober and transitional housing? Could we reduce our jail population in these ways? This, too, is one of my big questions, and I'm not so far satisfied with the answers that I've gotten. We're doing some things right, but we're doing less than some other counties. One challenge is that the district attorney, the sheriff, the county executive, and the judges are substantially independent. They can work collaboratively, and they often do, but if someone doesn't want to, it's hard to make them. Our drug court shut down because certain partners were uncommitted to it. But here are some things that we are currently doing about addiction, alternatives to incarceration, sober housing, etc. One is that we have a newish medication-assisted treatment, MAT, program for those struggling with addiction at our jail. Along with some county staff, I will be visiting a similar program in Winnebago County next week to learn more about what we're doing. Perhaps we can improve our programming. Another thing is we'll be using a small amount of opioid settlement funding to help out the Phoenix Nest sober living facility for women that the Gratitude Club is going to be breaking ground on soon. This will give us a new way to support women in recovery in one of the weakest links in our whole system, which is safe housing with people who are struggling to get sober or have just left jail. However, our number of sober living beds will still be very low compared to, say, Winnebago County, which has about 100 beds. We're in the maybe 24 range once we have this Phoenix Nest. Another program that we have is we do have a diversion program that keeps out of jail some low-level offenders who do not pose a threat to public safety. Good that we have it. Other counties have multiple diversion programs for everyone from veterans to domestic abusers to bad check writers to those dealing with substance abuse. We could do more if we could get buy-in from our DA and others. Finally, we have drug treatment programs, but we seem to put very people through residential treatment compared with other counties. In a typical year, we put one to a few people through, despite the fact that residential treatment costs the county less than jail. Dane County recently had 9% of its addiction clients in residential programs. My persistent questions about this have not brought me clarity. We have some enrichment programs in our jail. Some people want to know, what are we doing in jail to help people reduce recidivism? And some of our programs probably help some inmates get their lives together to some degree, but it's important to know that the average length of stay in jail is just 2 weeks. So while we absolutely should and do provide programming, short stays mean that impacts are going to be limited. Also, a serious limitation of our current jail is that it has very little space for programming. We have way more volunteer providers than we have spaces to accommodate them. A new jail could actually make a really big difference in the programming that we could offer. So, in the interests of leaving plenty of time for Q&A and for us to listen to you, I'm going to stop there, but Gary would like to talk with you briefly about some of the financing options that we have for the jail.
Thanks, Kat. Just to touch on a couple of things there, Kat just mentioned about programs and stuff. About 2 weeks ago, I think the sheriff had asked me, we put on a public safety committee meeting to talk about all the programs and stuff that she just mentioned. So in a slide a little bit ago, you seen less than 2% are there for marijuana or anything like that. So, I mean, the programs are great, but a lot of these people that are in our jail, are in our jail and you don't want them on the street. One of the unique things I think we have in Fond du Lac County versus all the surrounding counties when you talk about the mill rate and stuff is we have Interstate 41, we have Highway 23, we have 49, we have 44, we have Madison to our southwest, Green Bay to our north, the Valley just to our north, Milwaukee to our south. And so a lot of these people are traveling through and are coming to our community and creating crimes. My wife and I, she's in the room there, about 3 weeks ago, we went to Menards on a Sunday afternoon for a little bit of staying for a project. And if you know me, everybody knows who I am. I pay attention to everything, and we're leaving Fond du Lac, and I'm always looking in my mirrors, and I see the lights going. And all of a sudden, I look again, and here's a black car pulls out, lights are flashing, flying by us, I don't know, probably well over 100 miles an hour. And here was a guy, afterwards, my wife, she has a Fond du Lac scanner, I think, on her phone. I don't do any of that stuff, but here's a car that they were eluding police officers, took off heading west out of Fond du Lac towards Ripon, made a turn on I, and then they were on, I think, T, so I knew they were heading towards 26. And I told my wife, I says, watch. I says, as soon as we can see Rosendale, I says, you just watch. I said, they're either going to go straight, turn left or right. Sure enough, I see the car sweep right and turn coming right towards us. That's the second time now in 10 minutes that we see this car. So I pull over the first road east of Rosendale there to get us out of the way there because this guy's obviously wanting to get away from our officers. Well, they actually got him just south of 23 back towards Fond du Lac, and there were 5 occupants in the car, and they had a gun. They got out and ditched the gun by a pole shed there. They were from north of us, but here they are in Fond du Lac County again, eluding our officers and creating a problem. Kat mentioned, I think it's 30% or a little more that are out of county people in our jail. One of my thoughts, my wife's thought about trying to help cut down our inmates in our jail would be when we pull people over for drug possession, whatever it is, you'll see on Facebook a lot of times a lot of money involved. They got vehicles, this stolen, that stolen, whatever, property seizures. Our sheriff department has to go through hoops with fire to try to get any of that money back from the state that they could actually recoup and use to operate their sheriff's department. I think it's about 75% of it goes back to Madison and goes back to the school districts. Now that's an old law, but it doesn't mean Fond du Lac County can't be the pioneer to talk about trying to get that law changed, because there's a lot of drug money that comes through Fond du Lac County. I think personally it would be a deterrent for people, and actually it would help other counties maybe take care of some of the issues they have in their counties. It would be an incentive for them if they could actually keep a lot of that money, if it's only used within your justice and jail system, your sheriff's department. Use it for programs, use it for fixing stuff, use it for building a new building, whatever have you. But that's something I think I'd like to talk about before I get too far on that. I want to mention that we do have another supervisor walked in, but this has never been to the finance department, everybody, just so you understand. This has been to, it's going to get there, I hope. I'm going to talk about stuff tonight that I've talked to other people about, but I'm not at a finance meeting that I can talk about this stuff and bring up to my other peers. We have enough here in the room. This meeting was noticed, correct, Kat? So, I mean, we have a couple of them in here, but we're not talking about anything specific on any of our meetings. So this will get to finance. All you've ever heard about was the $400 million and what it's going to do to your taxes. I mentioned to Kat actually a couple months ago in our joint meeting that I'm not even concerned about the number right now because I don't know what the number is going to be. Our focus was we need a jail, we can't do nothing, we need to at least build a jail, we don't know what that's going to cost. Maybe it's $200 million, maybe it's $250, maybe it's $175. We have no idea until we get out there and we see the numbers. So some of my other ideas, for potential funding, but we need to get the finance so we can actually talk about this at finance and come up with ideas and suggestions. But I'm going to share some with you guys tonight because I think there's some good ideas, and I think, people would like it. The taxes, for instance, let me just touch on that. Fond du Lac City, Mary lives there, and John, you're not in the city. Mary, you're the only one I think lives in the city. They just did a reevaluation this last year, And the taxes went up tremendously in the city of Fond du Lac. Green Lake City just did the same thing too. And everybody sees their tax bill. And they look at that number and it's shocking. I mean, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $3,000, $4,000, whatever they were paying before, it's up $500,000, $800,000, whatever it is. When I was a mayor here, I always kept a copy of my property tax bill with me, so when people have questions, I could actually talk to them and explain to them. So my house right here in Ripon that I live in is 950 square feet. My taxes are about $2,800. I got a picture here. Mind you, my eyes are bad as you get older here. So, of the taxing jurisdictions on this is just current right now, on my house in Fond du Lac County, my county portion is my total taxes is $2,897. The county portion is $713 for the county. The city of Ripon is $1,143. The school district is $865, and Marine Park is $85. So when you break that down, it's almost $3,000 for my little 950 square foot house. Love my little house. It's just me and my wife now. Kids are gone. We have grandkids, but it's plenty big. Some people have a lot bigger house, pay a lot more in taxes. But of the $2,897, I pay $713 to the county. I think I get a lot of services from the county for my $713. But I'm not looking at the whole picture of what that tax bill is. And I think people need to do that and just see, you know, what is it that they're getting for services and what's it actually costing them. So that's something I, you know, wish more people would look at and understand what they're actually paying and what services are getting out of it. So, and I apologize because I myself should have did something 2 years ago, but I didn't. We actually share, we have a couple council members in the room here. We actually share, Marty, were you on the board when we started sharing $1 million with the towns and cities and villages?
Yes.
Yeah, so Marty Farrell was on the board when we decided to do this. The 0.5% sales tax that was created years ago for the Merck Marine project to keep them in town. So everything's been going good. It's probably been, I don't know, 4 years now, we decided we're sharing $1 million of the 0.5% sales tax countywide with every city, town, village, and municipality in the county, which is great because everybody has been struggling for money to fix roads, do whatever have you. I think Kat mentioned low-hanging fruit before for something. I don't know what it was for, but in my opinion, that is low-hanging fruit. I hate to do it, but it's $1 million a year the county is sharing right now. And if we bond, this is a 20-year bond that we will bond for. So that $1 million we're sharing, the city of Ripon, Doug, I think we give you guys about 66,000?
Something like that.
Real close to there?
Ask me that question.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a big number for the city of Fond du Lac, but it's a small number of our million, but it's $1 million a year for 20 years. That's $20 million towards this project, without even talking about any type of financing yet. So I think we really, and once we get to finance, I'll talk about it. I'm talking about tonight, so we have some supervisors here that, you know, our first time hearing this, but I think the first thing we need to do, it's simple. It's hard. It's a decision we got to make, but we have to make it because that's $20 million in a project that we're talking about could be 280, 380, whatever. We don't know yet. But I should have went to the budget meeting last year and I should have, you know, made a little discussion about that, and we should have stopped that already last year because we could be putting it aside. Now, putting that aside, the other thing I just mentioned is I've been on the board long enough, and Marty will remember this too, the Sheriff's Department has always generated revenue that has went back to the general tax roll and helped out the general fund until the last 4 or 5 years, pretty much since COVID. Bless you. And now it is actually costing us money. The only reason right now we have about 20 over in Green Lake County that we're paying for. We're using our tax dollars to pay to house out of county because we don't have enough room in our own jail. We did just increase the juvenile rate, I think the last 3 months or 4 months ago or something like that. There is only 7 of the 72 counties that actually have a juvenile detention center in their county jail system. 7. And if we don't have one, that means anybody that potentially is locally here, not from out of our county, that has kids that wind up in that juvenile system are going to be shipped off someplace in the state. And that means there would only be 6 if we wouldn't do something. So when you're talking about numbers and cost, we could say, yeah, sure, we don't want to do a juvenile justice portion or piece with our jail, but any local juveniles then are going to wind up going someplace else, and there's only 6 other places. I can't tell you the counties, but there's only a total of 7 in the 72 counties. Some of our neighbor counties right next door don't want nothing to do with it, but we have and we've done, and it is generating revenue. You don't build a jail to make revenue. However, we did for many years until we got to the point where we can't house anymore because we're up against what the state is making us do, so we have to ship them out. And that ties in with the jail and building a jail and sizing a jail, is if we do nothing and the state steps in and says, okay, all these deficiencies that we've noticed over the last 10 years, now you have to start, remedying these, and our jail count could go down 50, 80, I don't know what they would reduce us to, but instead of having 20 right now currently out of jail in Green Lake County, we potentially could have 80, 100, 150 people. And you want to talk about cost, I mentioned earlier, the consultant or the firms the other day just said, the cost of building the jail is a big pill to swallow initially, because it's a lot of money. Now, it's a lot more since COVID because cost of everything went up. If we would have built this jail when Marty was around yet, and when Al Beco was talking about this and Sheriff Fink, we could probably build the same thing you're talking about now that's $400 million for maybe $200 million. So, it's hindsight, but you can't go back now, and the cost of everything is up. It's unfortunate, but we need to move forward, and we have to do something. No is not an option, because as consultant mentioned the other day, the cost is one thing, but once it's paid off, the additional cost for Fond du Lac County and all the taxpayers for infinity is huge, way more than building a jail. So I'm not trying to tell you that we have to do this, we have to do a big justice center in jail all in one, but we have to do something. The jail is a start. That's what is the recommendation first until we see the numbers. So some other ideas that I have, the $1 million in sharing, I think we need to do something about it. The city of Ripon passed a wheel tax 2 years ago, Doug?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Steve? Okay. They passed a wheel tax. When I was mayor, we talked about wheel tax, and I'm like,
It's only been a year, so.
a year? I don't like them. I don't want to pay. But we gotta do something, and the wheel tax is going to go to fix roads, which is what it should be used for. And it's, I guess, not bad. As long as my property taxes aren't going up a whole bunch, I guess I can swallow that pill. But that's something I looked online, and there are a few counties that have wheel taxes. So a wheel tax, once we get the finance, a wheel tax is something I'll talk about at the county level. And then I can hear everybody right now out there in the audience. I don't want another wheel tax on my cars. The city just did one for me now, but we got to build a jail. It's going to cost a lot of money. And the thing about the wheel tax at the county level that I really like is, you've seen this tonight that Kat mentioned about the mill rate and what it's going to impact everybody. That's all I've heard for the last couple of years from everybody, is the cost of what it's going to cost you and me and everybody on their houses. A wheel tax gets spread, it's like the sales tax, gets spread amongst everybody in the county. A wheel tax in the county, I think, makes a lot more sense. Not that it doesn't in the city, you guys. I understand it's going to fix the roads. But Mary lives in Fond du Lac, and anybody's been around there, the apartment buildings in Fond du Lac, tremendous. You see the new big ones down there on Highway 175 and 151. I tell everybody, I'm surprised Quick Trip doesn't build a gas station right there at that intersection. There, if not hundreds, thousands of people that live there. So every one of those cars would pay a wheel tax that would help keep our property taxes on our houses lower. I don't know how much we could generate in revenue from that, but once we get the finance and we can talk about this, and the staff can actually look at that. When I looked on the website, the sheriff's department knows how many registered cars are in Fond du Lac County, so they can run some numbers, whether it's $25, $30, $35, $40, whatever it would be, and see what that would generate. And then I was talking to a business owner in Ripon here. The other thing I never thought of is mobile home parks. Every city and town and village has one. We have one in Ripon here. They pay lot rent, they pay a little bit in property taxes, but they would all pay a wheel tax then too. That helps defer that cost to all of us again then that own our houses and paying property taxes. So potentially between, doing a wheel tax between the apartment buildings and the mobile home parks, it would help reduce the cost that we would need to borrow for and pay for this project. So let me pick on somebody in the audience there that's in his phone knee deep right now, and one of his concerns is he voted no for this a couple times because of the cost of this. So John Rickert's on the county board back there. I've never talked to you about this, have I, John?
No.
Okay. So say we do nothing, and the only thing that the county does is what you've seen and heard so far is doing a bond for this and $400 million. So I don't know what John's house, I don't even know where he lives, to be honest with you. I don't know what his house is worth, but let's say John's house is, whatever we do, his taxes are going to go up $80 a month for 12 months by doing this. Okay? It's a lot of money, isn't it, John? But if we could implement a wheel tax, let's say $40, just so it's easy numbers for us. You're like, well, I don't want to pay $80 a month and a $40 wheel tax, do you? But what if you paid a $40 wheel tax and your $80 a month could potentially, we'd have to run numbers, could be $60 a month instead of $80. Saves you $20 a month. You pay a $40 wheel tax now, you save $200 a year. Would you be interested in paying that $40 wheel tax then if we could save you another $200 by doing that? It makes sense, right? It's numbers. I mean, I'm not a big numbers guy, but if that could help reduce and offset what we actually would pay in property taxes on each of our properties, I think we need to look at it. Doesn't mean we would do it. I'm the only one talking about it, and first time I've talked about it publicly. But I think we need to look at it. That's another tool potentially in the toolbox. I just heard our county executive this week again at a meeting. If we go out to bond, this is what I'm like, I need to get to finance because we got things we need to talk about. The wheel tax was one thing. The $1 million is another thing. I mentioned about when we pull people over. If we could somehow capture that, any of that money that's used for drugs, just so everybody knows, any of the drugs gets disposed of, any of the guns that get seized, that stuff gets ground up and disposed of. But anything else, if there's property or anything or cash or anything like that that we could seize and keep and use only for our jail and operations and sheriff's department, I think we should talk to Madison about it. Why not? I mean, it's happening now. It's just we need to reverse that portion of the pie so we could actually capture and generate more of that so we could use that in our own counties. And that would, I think, give an incentive to other counties, to maybe keep these people instead of letting them go or letting them off, letting them out of jail. Kat mentioned earlier about, people in our jail. I mean, some people say they want their jail full so they can build a new jail. Totally the contrary. We don't want our jail full. They've adjusted the guidelines and recommendations on some of these so we get as many people out as we can on the bracelets because it costs us money to have them in the jail. So those are a couple options that I've thought of. The other thing is, and I don't know this, but they said we can't do anything with the sales tax. I don't know why, but when we get to finance, I'll ask questions and talk about it. We have the 0.5% sales tax. We're using it now. Oh, let me back up a minute because this is huge. So the wheel tax. Remember, John, we're talking about the wheel tax on your property there? We use, I believe, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, about $3 to $4 million a year goes to the highway department to fix our roads. Okay? So the wheel tax, like City of Ripon, right, Doug and Steve, the wheel tax is going to be used to fix the roads, right?
Yes.
You're not buying more parks or putting up billboards or anything?
No,
Okay.
by law, it can't be. And we're going to use it to help replace the lead lines that we got to
Yep.
pull out.
So let's say we could generate $2 million in the wheel tax. That would go to the highway department for fixing the roads, which is what you should be using it for. So now I just asked, Tom said we're sharing about $3 to $4 million a year with the highway for the roads. We could then take that, if it generates $2 million, take that $2 million back, plus I mentioned earlier the $1 million that we're sharing now. Now there's $3 million a year that we just found, pretty simply, in over 20 years, use that to offset the cost of the jail and reduce the number that you see in the pie that Mary made, showing how much it's going to cost all of us and burden all of us on our taxes. That makes sense, doesn't it? But we need to get there and talk about it yet. And so I will, everything that I'm talking to you guys about tonight, I will talk about at finance, because Doug was around when I was the mayor and the city administrator, Lori Rich here. If you don't ask, you don't get, and I'm never afraid to ask for anything. Heck, I even asked Monday for a discount and/or if one of these companies wanted to put their name on our jail out there for a 1% return on the cost of their deal, would have been $2.5 million. So I'll ask anytime for any of us taxpayers in our county if we can get money back. The state, our county executive said he had talked to the state about helping us build a jail, and it's like, not an option, no way, we don't want nothing to do with it. In my opinion, he went about it the wrong way, and I'll bring this up too, is we actually have one county, I think, right now that is actually securing beds, if you will. I think 2 beds, I think it's Winnebago County. So they pay for, let's just say 2 beds, 24/7, 365, whether they use them or not. So if they don't have room, then we have 2 beds guaranteed for them in our jail that they can use. But they're, what's that?
Juvenile beds.
Juvenile beds that they're paying for. Yes, right, thanks, Tom. And those are, I think they're up over $400 a day right now or something.
Pushing 5.
Yeah. So they're paying us now, whether we use them or not. And I think that's something we need to do with the state is, if the state says, we want 10 beds, and I'm going to say, well, we'll do this, and I'll advocate for this, but I want it for 20 years until this thing's paid off. I don't want it for 5 years. If we build something and we can give them 10 beds, let's do that. Because the state will be able to pay us every year for 10 beds a lot easier than giving us $10 million or whatever the number may be to help build this jail. The state last spring sent a letter out to every county in the state. They were looking for 850 beds that they needed to put prisoners. 850. And I don't think there's any jails in the state that really had much room at all that they could actually help out the state. Huge number. They asked us, and they actually asked again a little bit later, I guess. They found some beds, but they were looking for people that would have room in their jails. So if there's a need there, I think that's another discussion we should have. And if we wind up building a new jail, our old jail never had an issue with capacity until, I mean, we were close when Mick Fink was still there. Sheriff Ryan Walschmidt's been there, I think, 7 years now. And we were close a bunch of times, but the trend is, and it got closer and closer and closer, and here we are over. So you build a new jail, I would expect the same thing would happen, because we can't build a new jail and have it at full occupancy 6 months after we open it. All you taxpayers are going to say, well, why did you build one too small? What are you going to do now? Now you got to talk about an addition. Now you got to send them out. Now it's going to cost us for the next however many years to have these, prisoners. And as Kat mentioned, they're with us. The sheriff just told us the other day, like 14 days is the average. I think I'm almost done, Kat. Yeah, the only other thing I was going to say is, the state statute says the county board has to provide a jail for the sheriff. The sheriff statute is the sheriff has to or shall provide services to the county and has to operate and run the jail. We have to provide it, just like the judges. We have to provide the courts for the judges, the courtrooms and building and stuff, and they run them. Just touch on the judges just a minute there. I heard this question at one of our meetings the other day. We'll just get more judges. Well, we can't get more judges. They're all independent elected officials, and they're basically state employees. I mean, they're not ours. I can't say, yeah, we need to get 3 more judges and we get some more district attorneys. Well, the state would have to do that and the state would have to fund it. It's not up to us if we get more judges. But just another piece out there. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So at this point, I'd like to go into Q&A, and my My thought is you're welcome to ask questions generally of any of us who are here from the county board, or you can specify who you want to answer it if you think one of us is more likely to have what you're looking for. Remember that Gary is the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I am with the Human Services-oriented committee. We also have Tom Dornbrook here, who is on the Finance Committee, chair of the Finance Committee. So I would say if the other supervisors who are here have stuff to add when somebody asks a question, great. So yeah, we'll do our best to answer your factual questions. You're also free to ask us how we see the choices before us. If we can't answer your questions, I'm going to write them down, research them, and write an article based on the questions that you have asked that we couldn't answer here, but that I will look into. So stay tuned for a Commonwealth Press article. Go ahead.
I just have a general question, and it's a what if. You might not be able to even answer it. Demographic projections for Wisconsin have a stable population within 20 years starting to decline. Crime statistics that I keep reading are generally subdued or down beyond peak levels. Is there a danger that building this is going to end up being much more than we need in the future, 20 years down the road, because of those demographic changes?
It's certainly possible, though it has been considered. I mean, we've talked about, yes, the people who do this work, I mean, there's people with PhDs in number crunching for jail sizing, and they take all these kinds of factors into account, looking at overall population, looking at projected changes, looking at crime statistics, looking at our specific statistics. There's all kinds of stuff that can go into that, and looking at procedures in our, in our courthouses and that kind of thing, DA's office. So yeah, those sorts of demographic projections are part of it, but there are also unknowns. I mean, some of it is just unknowable. Like, who would have predicted 10 years ago that we would be doing mass deportation? I think a lot of us did not predict that, right? Who would have predicted the pandemic? That we had a sudden drop in birth rates because of the pandemic. We didn't predict that. There was a sudden drop in birth rates during the Great Recession. We didn't predict that. So there's all kinds of things that can come into play. But yeah, it is a possibility that we could be overbuilding. And I think a lot of us really hope not to do that. Other questions?
Let me just kind of touch on that just a bit. That was one of the concerns actually 20 years ago when they did the last jail expansion, was that they were going to build this thing too big, and we were never going to fill that up. And just to touch on that addition 20 years ago, the addition 20 years ago, and Mr. Farrell's been around for 28 years, so he was probably part of that. And I believe at the time, Marty, it was kind of a Band-Aid at the time. They knew they'd have to do something with it at some point in time down the road. They did a new jail addition 20 years ago. One of the issues we have now is they use like inferior copper pipes and stuff in this addition. You know, there's like type L and type M copper. One is thicker, one's thinner. They use the thinner copper pipe. And you can imagine our houses, we flush toilet here or there, running water, it's no big deal. But when you got a jail full and the water's running through these pipe all day long and it's wearing through. I mean, we have water coming through ceilings. Actually, by the judges there too. We've had, they're ready for court and all this stuff is wet, and some of the stuff you can't reproduce and you have to save it and it's all wet. Sewer water and stuff running down some of the walls in there. But they did that knowing that it was only going to be a temporary deal, that Fond du Lac County had to do something someday with a jail. In a new jail, but they didn't know where or anything like that. So that's what that last addition, there was 3 additions on the jail, and the last one was, it was only supposed to be temporary anyways. But they built it figuring they would never fill it.
Yeah.
Couple questions. How many cells do we have in our existing jail right now?
325.
325? Okay, also on the wheel tax deal, Gary, I know you're really for that.
Well, not that it must be for it.
No, I'm just saying.
It's just an option.
It's an option, but the city of Ripon people are paying so much money for their wheel tax already. This will be on top of the wheel tax that they're already paying.
Sir, could I ask a favor?
Yes.
So this is sort of strictly Q&A right now, and
Yes.
we do want to hear comments So if yours is sort of more of a comment, like, I don't like that wheel tax idea, or here's what I'm thinking, bring it on.
That's my question.
But okay, is there a question?
Yes.
Great.
When you do your wheel tax, are you going to include bigger vehicles, not just residential type vehicles?
State statute only allows you to do so much, so and I haven't researched it that much yet, Steve, but it's open for discussion. I mean, it's just an idea I thought of, and I think it's a way that we can discuss and talk about this. Steve, I'm telling you, I don't like it. I mean, my wife is sitting there, we sold the car. You know, anybody knows me, we have a convertible, we have SUV. I sold one of the cars because extra wheel tax, extra insurance, extra oil changes. I'm like, no, I can't afford it. I'm on a fixed income. I mean, it is what it is. But if we have to do something, and if we can save you $200 a year on your property taxes because of a wheel tax, I don't know who would say, Gary, don't do that. No, let me pay the $240. I mean, you know, so I think we have to talk about it and we have to discuss it and see what it would generate. And I just use $40 as a number because it's easy for me to tell you guys, if you're paying $80 a month and we could save you $20 a month, it was just a way for easy numbers.
I understand where you're going, but I'm looking at, there's a lot of commercial trucks that run
Yeah, I know.
that live in town.
I think this is kind of a
Thought of
sidebar
that.
issue. I mean, it's not been
All right,
formally
well,
proposed
that'll pull
anywhere,
back,
so.
but
let's
that's
move on.
where my concern is.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if anybody in the county, or to what extent, if any, you have been talking with the city of Fond du Lac or the Economic Development Corporation and Vision Greater Fond du Lac on what the impact, economic impact on downtown Fond du Lac would be to move all of this, the jail, the courts, way out in the country like that. And so that's it, number one. Number two, given the impact on the downtown, would they be willing to consider closing off that very short block of Western Avenue to enable a new jail complex to be built, connected to, not across the street from, the current jail?
Let me start with the second part. That has been mentioned. Most people don't like the idea. It certainly could be considered more. I mean, they're talking about having a sort of, you know, a bridge kind of a thing, connecting them. A lot of people don't like the idea of closing it off. In terms of conversations with Envision and Economic Development, my personal opinion is that there hasn't been nearly enough of that kind of conversation. I don't think that the county has been consulting as broadly as it should with other stakeholders. The police department in Fond du Lac has had virtually no input, as far as I can tell, into this discussion. That's not right. I mean, 60% of the population lives in the city of Fond du Lac, and they're bringing people to the jail. So I think a lot of those questions need to be asked, need to be pursued further. But it has not happened in the last year and a half. And now we're pushing really hard, gunning to do it fast. And in my opinion, some of these things really should be addressed. I'm going to write those down so that we don't lose them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Let me just finish up with Marty for just, I've thought of it, Marty, and I think it's a great idea. I haven't had a chance to discuss it, you know, publicly and all, but I mean, I think it's an option that we could do. I don't like that skywalk thing going over, and if we close that, I mean, I think we could have the Sally Port where you drive in on both sides of Western. You could raise it up because of the flooding issue with the water there. The other big issue we have, everybody, just so you understand, is our courts and our court system up in our, they're very inadequate, and we still need to do something with those courts down the road too. But, you know, we could potentially have where you drive them through, right down through underneath, that would be all enclosed, and the elevator goes up right to the courts, and it's all sealed off, and you know, you could use an electric golf cart or something like that, and a cage on it or whatever, but yeah, that is an option, a possibility that we could do, but the city would have to want to close that street.
Yeah, I just had a quick question on numbers. About how many people above and beyond our capacity are we sending out, are we needing to send out to other facilities?
For the last some months, a chunk of this last year, we've been sending about 20 to Green Lake. They're giving us kind of a special deal on it. We didn't have to do that before this year. but this year it's been consistent that we've had about 20 at a time out
So
there.
about 20. And then the cost is how much per day?
They're charging us only $45 a day. We get paid a little bit more than that, or used to get paid more than that, for the people who used to stay in our jail. 55 to 60, $65 a day is more common.
So about $900 a day then?
Something like
for
that.
20 people? So 365 days?
Math teacher.
Yeah,
So that's about 328,000.
Yeah.
So 328,500. So if you divide 400 million divided by 328,500, so that's 1,217 years.
What?
If the rent would be the same, right?
A long time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time to pay 400 million off of that. I mean, it'd be more economical to pay for the Green Lake people, to send them to Green Lake.
Yes, I mean, the whole question of moving prisoners around and having them stay elsewhere or having them stay in us, you can't cover your capital costs by selling beds to outside prisoners. And it is cheaper to send them out. The problem is, how long will you be able to do that for? If everybody tries to do that, it's like with the juvenile detention stuff. There's only 7 left because it wasn't in anybody's great interest to do it themselves. The economics are dicey. So,
Yeah, well, what I did was I took the 325,500, that would be for 1 year
Yeah.
cost of 20 people at $45.
Right.
It's pretty
Right.
cheap. And then divided that into 400 million. And it's over 1,000 years that it would take to equal that amount.
So,
But I mean, there are other costs too. And of course, there's interest involved in the 400 million. And then there's renovation of the current jail. If you don't build a new jail.
I mean,
then you
we're
have
not
to
going to
renovate
do
the
a $400 billion project. I just don't see any universe in which that's going to happen.
Right.
I don't think.
I think we need to be good stewards of the money.
But that's just, I just don't think it
Well,
can pass.
We don't know what's going to cost yet
You know,
first.
I think, well, we do have an estimate. The consultant gave us the estimate, and he's the same person
Worst
who's
case
going to
scenario.
be doing the cost estimates if we go through with this next position. But the one thing I want to say on the 400 million is there is talk about phasing, which means we would do the jail first, then we do the sheriff's department,
We talked
then we
about
would
that.
do.
Yeah.
And if we phase,
Yeah.
we may end up at that number within the next 10 or 20 years.
400 million.
Yes,
It would probably
because
go higher.
there's-
It's only getting more
It's,
expensive.
Right.
everything would be
Yeah.
moved out there, you've got to build it. The cost of building does go up, it's, longer you wait, there is some inflation. So there's, to me, that's not resolved.
So the 20 that we send to Green Lake, most of them are female detainees, and,
It doesn't matter if it's male or female.
yeah,
That's not the point.
no, let me finish.
Okay.
Jails, if you're going to send people out, if you're Green Lake County and I'm Fond du Lac County, and I'm asking you to send over there, you're going to ask for our least low-level people. And they happen to be the females. So they're only charging us 45. We're only sending our females over. They're the least level offenders. If we send you over our bad people, you're not going to want them. You're going to say, I won't even take them. And so that's what all of them will do. If you're going to send people out, they're going to want your least level offenders that you have in your jail first. And then when you just did your numbers there, so that's the 20 we're currently sending out. If we do nothing, okay, if we do nothing, and the county board we could all vote to shoot this all down and nothing might happen, and the state then will come in and we'll have to start fixing our jail up to classifications and the numbers, and instead of 20 people being shipped out, we might have 150 people a month shipped out. So we won't know that until we say, no, we're not doing anything, and the state comes in, and then we have to fix up our jail to make it adequate for the size and classifications that they make us do. And that'll cost a lot of money.
Kat, the question I have right now, seeing I came in late because of another prior meeting, did you talk about the executive committee meeting that took place on Monday, where we talked about bringing in a consultant to do some diversion
Synthesize it.
programs and make some?
Yep.
Okay. The other thing I would like to say, if this is supposed to be during comments, you let me know, and I'll stop now.
If it's a question now, it belongs. If it's a comment, well, go ahead, jump in.
Okay, well, what happens is, I know right now Techeetah is over 500 people overpopulated. They actually closed down a gymnasium to start housing the female people there. There is going to be a revenue process if we have open beds where the state will be sending people by us, which will help pay off some of this debt. And I agree with you, and with Mary, I don't think there's anybody on our board right now that is wanting to vote for a $400 million project. If I'm wrong, I think what we want to do is start out small. I think the county board wants to do as much as they can at the least possible cost, and that is our responsibility as a county board, is to give you the best product for the least cost. And I will be a champion of that. We got to decide, our next step is the schematic design of the jail, to decide whether we're going to be downtown or whether we're going to be out at the highway department site, and also if we are going to build a $400 million highway site, or if we're going to do a $230 million, or whatever that lower cost comes, to just put the jail out there. So I mean, that's my take. And again, we have to do something, otherwise, the county exec said today, if we get voted down on the RFP for the designs that we're going to present to the board this coming Tuesday, the other option is to stabilize that old jail, get rid of the asbestos, the bad plumbing, the bad electricity, and have to reduce it down to 150 beds that we're going to have to send out. I don't even know where we can find 150 beds. The state can't even find 150 beds. How do you expect Fond du Lac County to do it?
Thank you, Tom. Yeah.
I would like to ask about excess spots, because I understand Dodge County has excess that they're renting to the federal government.
Yep.
So why aren't we we're not that far, why aren't we working with more people for excess for now, instead of them making money from the federal government? Why can't we rent from them?
My guess is that the federal government is paying more than we would.
And did they
They have a lot of money.
Did they overbuild their jail
They did.
that they have to now, and so are we looking at what they did so we don't make that same mistake?
Is it the jail or the prison?
The jail, the Dodge County Jail has
Yeah.
you can talk about
Yeah,
that,
there's
they have an
about
ice facility,
80
correct?
ice people, yeah.
And so do we want to build too big a jail, and then we end up doing whatever we have to fill it? And I don't know how people feel about that.
We don't want to do that, Tom, because it's very, as you can see, it's very expensive to build a jail. It's about $1,000 a square foot is what the consultants tell us. So you can't pay your capital costs by selling a bed for $50 a day. You can cover your operating costs probably. You can bring in some revenue. I'm not saying there's no revenue, but you cannot justify overbuilding for what you can earn renting beds. You rent beds if you happen to have them, but you don't plan for that because you don't want that. The only way in which you could conceivably plan for it is if you were really sure that you were gonna need this extra space in a certain number of years and you were gonna grow into this jail and you wanted, so you did it that way. I think our sheriff would like to look at it that way, that we build a jail that we don't fill up right away, but we do fill those beds. I think for a lot of people, a lot of people don't want to do that because I think a lot of people feel like we need to just go with the most minimal. But I want to hear from you all, what you think.
Thank you. Nobody would build a jail for somebody else. I mean, that would be foolish of us, all of us supervisors, trying to build a jail for other counties or other people. We need to build it for Fond du Lac County and size it for Fond du Lac County. So I would vote against building a jail that's an extra 100 beds so we can make that. That's not what you build a jail for. You don't do that.
So if we looked at why Dodge County made that mistake, that they have so much extra room.
The other thing is, building, as you mentioned, before COVID, we could have probably built this thing for half. And I toured Green Lake County Jail. As we all sit here right now in this room, their pod jail thing that they made. Mary, were you there? Did you tour that? They have a section there that is just a shell. It's just all walls like this, it's open. That they could fill in and they could rent out more spaces. But I would hate to know the cost of what they could have built that for when they built that a couple of years ago versus what it would cost them to finish it now. So they actually have a section there that is just a shell,
It was
all
a
prepped and ready. It was compromised.
It's all plugged in, you know, everything would be ready to be connected. They made it so it'd be really unusually cheap to finish it.
But the cost now would be tremendous, and unfortunately, it's just sitting there.
Can I just make a perspective comment? Gary, you can comment on this as well. When we were back in the point of purchasing the land, I remember from having a conversation with Al Beagle that the target number was 60 million. You know, that kind of was like, okay, what would we be spending in the future? And I know that, you know, and that was because, as Gary said, the square footage cost of building a jail went from about $300 up into $850 or $1,000. There was, I mean, they showed us a chart. It just went like this. So back when Green Lake built theirs, they were back in the old times. Same thing with Dodge County. That is just no longer possible because of the high construction costs.
I mean, one of the things that crossed my mind since I went through Green Lake is, I mean, if it was feasible for us as Fond du Lac County to actually help them, you know, finish that piece, that they have a shell there that we could use, you know, our inmates, and who knows, it might be something we discuss and talk about as we get farther in building this, and we need to go someplace with our prisoners. If we do something downtown, there's a transition, we're going to need to find someplace to go, and maybe that's something, a compromise that we work with them on and say, let's help you finish this piece out that you didn't do when you built it, and house 100 of our people there. But there's a lot of things that we have to talk about yet.
Gary?
Well, I'm going to pick up on what Marty brought up. It's presently called the city-county building. So would that still, I guess what I'm ultimately getting at is the city of Fond du Lac have its own jail? And how are the relations between the county of Fond du Lac and the city of Fond du Lac? Could we do any overlap there or something?
It's a great question, Gary. The Sheriff's Department shall provide a jail for the entire county of Fond du Lac. Nobody in Fond du Lac County other than Fond du Lac County has a jail to take. I mean, we can't, it'd be great to say, Ripon, everybody you arrest here, you take them back, you do whatever you got to do with them, find a jail, make a jail for them. City of Fond du Lac, North Fond du Lac, Ripon, the county has to provide a jail, and the sheriff in that county has to maintain and operate that jail. It's state statute.
Well, I understand that.
Nobody has a jail. So 66% to your question about the building, the county's responsibility of that building, Fond du Lac City Government Building, is 66%, and then the city is 33%. It'd be great if we could get all of these jurisdictions to help us pay for this, because we are housing prisoners from every jurisdiction in our county, but that's what the taxes are for.
But everything is moved out to Scott Road. Half the building is empty.
Well, 33% is the city, 66% is the county.
Well, then 66% of it would be empty.
No, because there'd still be a lot there. There'd still be stuff there. And my fear is, and we have supervisors here, so they get to hear it from me. My fear is we even build downtown, and 3 years from now the city says, we're out of here. We're gonna move all of our services that we've been sharing this building with you for so many years, but I think we have a lease with them for X amount of time or whatever, but that we're partners. But what if they all of a sudden walk out on us? Now we got 100% of the building we got to take care of. You know, the issue with the current jail and down on the end there is there's a lot of settling. There's doors that don't open and close. They can't get hardware to fix these doors because they're obsolete. They don't make them anymore. There's some issues with the soil down there, potentially where we want to maybe build across the street and or where the current building is. And I've asked before, I don't know if you guys have heard me, is if we can take that down and just make a parking lot there and cap it and not disturb it, just take off that end of that building so it isn't as big, even if we build downtown, instead of remodeling it, because it is in such bad shape down there in the settling and stuff like that. They can fix that stuff, They told us, with peers and stuff and supporting and stuff, but that costs a lot of money to do that too. So,
Kat, just for the gentleman who asked about Dodge County, I got some background information on that. When Dodge County built their jail, they did go in agreement with the federal authorities from the get-go before the ground even broke to rent beds to the state. That helped pay for their jail and their justice.
When was
center.
that? How old is that, Jim?
I'm thinking 20 years old, but I'm not for sure. But our sheriff has looked into it, and now the federal standards to build a jail that would be capable of housing federal inmates has gone so high that would almost double the cost of what we're asking for right now. So that was, housing federal inmates is not an option as far as saving money.
Thank you.
The walls have to be thicker. There are just so many more standards that the federal government puts on than what our state puts on our jails.
Thanks, Tom.
I have a question regarding what percentage of inmates in the Fond du Lac County Jail have mental health problems? And could we reduce the number of inmates by dealing with those mental health problems outside of the jail setting?
I can't give you exact numbers on that, but it is a high percentage. We know that it's at least 50% are coming in with substance use disorders, and that is very closely tied with mental health issues. We do have programs, and they're not always reaching the people who need them. Sometimes they are, and they're not enough. We've done some things, for example, the crisis workers embedded with both the police department, the Fond du Lac Police, and the Sheriff's Office. They have done a lot to divert people from jail and from involuntary hospitalizations in our acute unit. They've diverted, oh my gosh, I think by now it's probably hundreds of people away from that by just, they know these people, a lot of them are people who call over and over, and the social workers know them and can talk them down and can work out an arrangement and keep them going. They check up on them regularly. That's been a very, very good program. It's not 24/7. A first step towards upping it, I think, would be that, to make it 24/7. But that program has done a lot. I will say that other programs, the problem is that most of what we do, we are mandated by the federal or state government to do. And a lot of what we do is it's mandated but only partially paid for. And so we just keep going deeper in the hole, and it's really hard to find the money to do more than what we're mandated to do. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like the very small partnership that we have with the Gratitude Club, which is building the Phoenix Nest Sober Living, is really important, because they are a private outfit, nonprofit, doing it because they love it, because they care, because they're people who've been through this, and they're providing a service that can make a big difference for our people. And they're doing it not on our dime. I mean, we're giving them $50,000. That's nothing. But it's only 8 beds, right? I mean, we need a lot more. If Winnebago County has 100 and they're filling them up, we probably should have 100 too. So there's a lot more to be done there, and I think some of those things are, to my mind, the best ways to go, particularly sober housing and transitional housing, because it basically pays for itself. Once you have the building, people are paying rent to be there. It's cheap rent. They may be paying, $100 a week or something, but they are paying. And the program costs are very low, because a lot of the people who work there are part-time and volunteers, and you only have to pay maybe one staff person to be there all the time. It's a cheap deal. And locking people up is closer to $150 a day, and actually putting people in residential treatment, if they'll accept it, which not everyone will. But if you put people in residential treatment, the county only pays $50 a day of that versus the jail. So these treatment things are cheaper. There are several things that seem to get in the way. One is, I don't understand why we don't put more people in residential treatment. I am truly mystified. I bring it up all the time, and they're mad at me. So I don't get it. I don't feel like the answers make sense to me yet, because they're not in line with what some other counties are doing. But I'm glad that we're going to go visit another project in Winnebago County and see what they're doing, and see if maybe they're doing something different that we could emulate.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident that our dispatch, when you talk about mental health issues and like people are constantly calling. I'm pretty sure, not 100%, but pretty sure when our dispatch notices stuff like that, they try to direct them to services, you know, if it's been an ongoing thing with a certain person or home or something. So that's before we even would see them, hopefully, at the jail. So it's something we've never discussed and talked about. We could, you know, ask Sheriff, but I'm pretty sure our dispatch has done that for a long time. And, you know, that we got great dispatchers there and they're constantly working. So they'll see that stuff, and I'm pretty sure they'll forward stuff on and try to get help with people before they wind up in the system.
I do have one more factoid for you that's relevant to your question. We just, at our meeting on Monday, talked about a suicide prevention program in Fond du Lac County. So there were last year 28 suicides in Fond du Lac County, and only 2 of them were receiving services from the county. And their question is, how come? Now the good news is they're asking, how come? What could we do? So they're doing an ad campaign to reach out and make it known to the people of Fond du Lac that we have services for you. Please reach out to us. They're aware that they're not reaching everybody. So it's a good question. Anyone else on questions? Anything that you need to understand better, facts that you need, additional information that we should be seeking? Because I will write up answers to whatever we couldn't answer tonight. I'll do the research I can. Yeah, Mary, and then...
I just, in terms of looking at how many people are here and wondering how many people in the county are really unaware of what's going on, what's being done to bring out what's happening and make more people aware of what's going on with this issue? I know you've written articles in the newspaper, but I'm just, you know...
I would say that, yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair question. I would say that Mary has done a lot more to get the word out there in Fond du Lac. Her listening session was packed. There were 5 or 6 times as many people at least as there are in here now. I mean, it was a very full library. I think there's a lot more people in Fond du Lac who are paying attention. I don't know. I don't think it's the culture of the county to do outreach on this sort of thing. I think they post documents on the website and consider it done. And that's a good thing, that's a necessary thing. I think that we should be doing more.
There's been a lot more with the TV and radio stations lately just because of the discussion and talk lately. So, I mean, I think it was it Monday meeting? Fox 11 showed up, Channel 2 showed up. I actually was on the radio. Mary's been on the radio.
I was on the radio last week.
Yeah, Kat's been on the radio. So, I mean, it's being more and more lately. But again, this has been a long process. We've talked about, we bought the land in 21. A year ago, a little over a year ago, was the ad hoc committee was done and gave a recommendation, you know, to the county. So it's being more prevalent now lately that we're getting closer. Again, like I said earlier, we still haven't been to finance to talk about this either yet. So not once has this been to finance. It's been to other committees yet, but still never been to finance yet to discuss and talk about. Because we still don't know what we're talking about for a building and or a cost.
One last question. You've talked about the costs in that building now and the different possibilities, 200 million, 400 million, whatever. Have you done a projection of, I know there are variables, it could be another pandemic, there could be something else happening, makes the future impossible to really see. But have you done any financial projections to deal with what, for example, would be the projected costs if this were delayed, this decision were delayed 1 year? How much more would it cost were it to delay 1 year? That might put a little
If they follow the lines
burner
out,
under a seat now.
Yes, that is what's putting, that's what's lighting fire under our butts.
Do you have an idea of what that might be? How much the cost might increase?
Well, I don't. I can tell you what they've been telling us.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Because when my committee met with Highway, Building and Highway Committee, my hope was we'd have one meeting and then we'd get joint meeting with Finance so we could talk about this, because they said we can't keep doing this because it's costing us $500,000 to $750,000 a month.
That's how much it goes up.
Is that right? Does that sound about right, Mary?
You know, we've had different figures on that. In the beginning, they talked these high numbers, and it's come down.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe that it's costing us $500 a month to wait. $500,000 a month to not do anything.
That's what they're telling us now.
That's what they're telling us.
That's what they're telling us. It's also true that jumping into a decision that's the wrong decision is extremely costly.
Is also very costly.
Yeah.
So a year would be $6 million.
Okay, thank you.
And then somebody over here, another one. Okay, if there are no more questions, I would, at this point, entertain people talking about what concerns haven't been addressed, what are your bottom line requirements. I will tell you that my, let me just give a little spiel here. Speaking for myself, I believe that doing nothing is really not an option. I would regard a failed resolution on a jail project as a very unfortunate outcome. It would send us back to the drawing board. I'm trying to be clear with my colleagues and the consultants about what I need to get to yes. I would like to know from you what you need to get to yes. Today is by no means your only chance to weigh in. Once we have fleshed out options for both sites, we will be holding public meetings where there will be lots of professionally presented information and a chance for people to talk about their feelings about it. But the more we know about your preferences now, the more I know about your preferences now, the more likely that they can shape the work going forward. There will be chances to give input in this design process as we're going forward. So I want to know, what would get you to yes, and what would you like to say yes to?
Well, this is an elected democracy, a republic of form of government. I would like to see the people that you elect or select to be in the positions to make decisions to be clear, accurate in the numbers, accurate in the facts, and transparent in the presentation. That's what I really want. And I could probably be persuaded to different numbers depending on that.
And I think as Kat mentioned, you know, once we have some numbers and we know options, you know, the sheriff will be here, you'll be able to ask the sheriff questions, county executive will be here, consultants will be here, you'll actually be able to ask questions from the professionals and you know, get some of those things answered. So I think Tom was here, he just stepped out, but I think they had the sheriff and county exec there. Kat wanted to do this a little bit different, and this is great, you know, the way it is. And but certainly, when you think of stuff after you leave here, jot it down. And when there are public listening sessions and you start going around the county, make sure and have those questions with you so you can ask them and get answers so you can get to that yes.
Okay, well, you know, I'm not going to say too much. I had 28 years as a supervisor, so I had my say for a long time, including buying the land. But as Mary pointed out, that what we're looking at is a jail out there was a much smaller amount. That's not an excuse. I felt that the price of the land was too high at the time, $27,000 an acre. If I had to do over again, I might do something different. But I know it's very difficult, and I know that you have to do something. But if at all possible, I would like to keep the facilities downtown. And as far as closing Western Avenue, yes, some people won't like it, but people who live in Ripon will remember when we had streets running right through the middle of the Ripon College campus. I believe it's Elm Street and what was the other one? Seward. And I mean, my God, the students would walk out 2-3 steps out of the student union and there'd be a car going by. And it took some work, but eventually around 2007, President Joyce convinced the city council, I'm not sure if you were there at the time, to agree. They also paid them $1 million, I believe, for the property. That street in the city of Fond du Lac, we're talking a very short block there, And it's not landlocked, there's plenty of other ways to get where you need to go. And to build it, you could then build the new facility as big as you wanted, right there using the street and the parking lot. And then you could remodel or tear down the current jail, rebuild that, it'll all be connected, and you can remodel the courts. And I know we have some judges here, with all due respect, I read your letter, but it didn't convince me. But I don't have, fortunately I only been called for jury duty one time. Now that I'm saying what I'm saying, I'll probably get called every week. But no, seriously, I don't really know your situation either. But it's just in a realm of possibilities. To me, it would be desirable, if at all possible, to keep it downtown and in the current complex. But if that's not possible, if that does not make sense, based on your careful consideration, I will certainly accept that.
And you'll have those choices and discussion to talk about when they get this put together, and because you will have option A and B, because they're gonna, and you'll know then what the cost is for downtown and what the cost is out on Scott, and they're gonna figure out the cost of operations once it's built. What are the operations on those? So you will be able to answer that question, down the road when we have a public meeting down the road and all that information is here.
Another question. If it's built downtown, if the complex is rebuilt downtown, and you sell that land out there that we bought for $6 million back when, how much would that land be worth now?
We paid $6 million.
Good question. I doubt the county would.
It wasn't $6 million.
Huh?
It wasn't $6 million. It was like 1.2 million.
Yeah, that sounds right. 1.2
So how much
sounds
would
about
the
right.
land? No, that would be money that would go towards this if it were built downtown.
Could be, yeah.
Could be, should be.
Yeah, just like the million I said earlier that we're sharing with the cities and towns and villages. I mean, that $1 million, that's 20 million over 20 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I assume that shared state resources have been looked at too, to pay for this jail, right?
We've been told there aren't any.
There aren't any.
Well, if this is the comment section, I actually didn't feel like my question about the county and city thing got answered, but I tend to prefer a downtown site. I would ask you to consider that people out here are really feeling squeezed. I think they really are. I mean, they felt squeezed in my whole lifetime, and I think it's really more so now. And if you remember, the Fond du Lac School District, just a little while, was it last year or 2 years ago, they tried to pass I believe it, I don't know if it was some kind of referendum. It was only going to be, I don't know, $1 per 100,000 or something. That failed. And you keep talking about, well, we don't know these numbers. Yes, we do. They put it out there for 100 million. I mean, they didn't just guess, I'm assuming. They figured that's what it was going to be.
Yeah, that was just a number from a consultant if we did.
Well, I understand, but consultants don't just...
Yeah. If we did everything.
They don't just, oh, well, what the heck, we'll just make out this number. That's not what they...
It's if we did everything, and if it was out there and everything was new. It was just a number that was put out there.
And the average person is going to say, okay, so today they're telling us it'll be 400 million so they can get it passed. Then once it gets done, it'll be 600 million or something.
Gary,
that's what people think.
It could be 470 million. We don't know until they actually get the drawings put together and they go out for bid. Nothing's been out for bid. We don't even have drawings yet. So.
Well, and ultimately, I mean, every place in the world has a power structure. And I'm not that familiar with the Fond du Lac power structure. But what it feels like to me is there were people that decided, okay, we'll put we want to have a new complex out in a new place. So we'll put the highway building out there, and then that'll force the other thing to happen too.
Yeah, I don't think that was part of it at all. I mean.
Well, you may not have been part of it, but okay.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. That's just what I'm saying.
Yep.
what does the city do if the county moves out of that building? Then what happens? Because they only have a third of the building, I understand, right? So are we screwing the city too?
The city's not, or the county's not talking about moving out of the building completely anyways. The county would still have resources and departments and stuff there. The county would have, the county's on the hook to maintain 66% of that building, even if we left it vacant.
So then we're paying that 66% plus from the building?
If it was empty, yeah. If you left it and it was empty.
There is one other factor here, which is that the county executive has said he would veto moving what's downtown, other than jail, outside, out to the Scott Road. He would veto moving the stuff that's currently downtown. Now, I don't know why they put forth a resolution to do that he would then veto if it went through, but that's what they did. So I don't know what he's going to do, although the number of votes to bond is higher than the number of votes to override a veto. Either way, we have to get to the bond vote, and that's going to be 19. So I think there's very serious consideration of the downtown option at this point. I think that we're not going to move forward without having a real downtown option. It's not going to be, it was honestly my feeling during the ad hoc committee, I felt that the downtown option was discounted and wasn't studied as intensively. We didn't come up with as good information about it. We didn't pursue the options as far because there was such a strong push to use the new site. And there were some good reasons for that. I mean, staying downtown has some real disadvantages. We would be building something new onto something old that may not be very salvageable. Parts of it may not be very salvageable. We'd be chaining ourselves to an old, funky facility. There are disadvantages. There are also real advantages. My feeling is that nothing we can do is going to have no downsides. Every option has real problems. And there are justifications for doing lots of different things too. I don't think it was malice about going outside, and I don't think it was stupid. I think it was hopeful, because dealing with a big mess and trying to make it better is not as nice as just like, let's just start fresh and do this right from the beginning. I get the urge to do that. It's going to be snarly if we do it downtown, and not necessarily cheaper, given some of the risks, given the risks of contaminated soil that we might go worse than we think if we uncap it, given the fact that we're by a river that sometimes overflows and that problem is not likely to get better in the coming years. I mean, there are things about staying downtown that are problematic too. I personally am leaning that way, partly because, well, mainly for financial reasons, but I get the urge to start fresh.
Operational wise too, you know, Gary just mentioned a minute ago about building new and out there. So downtown, we're landlocked already. So we'd be talking about building in a parking lot, and the county executive mentioned about buying houses and taking houses down for parking. Downtown is going to be vertical.
Yeah.
And vertical means it costs more to operate and function forever. So even if it's cheaper to build a vertical one than to build a bigger one where you have space, the long-term cost of that is going to cost us all more forever. It's because you can only build so much here, and you can only see so many, so you have more officers, and they call them roamers, taking care of the vertical housing than the big housing. From what we saw the other day, Monday, I think, I mean, it's just because they put something, you know, that we could see in the slide, just because they're trying to sell us their services. It's 6 stories. Our current city government building is 4 stories. So this would be bigger than our current city-county government building down there. There's a YMCA, a big YMCA right across the river there. So, and as Kat just mentioned, down the road, if we ever need to do something else down the road, we still have to do something with the courts too, even if it stays downtown. The courts are very inadequate and need address serious attention and addressing down there too. So we'll know, and you know, it costs more to remodel than to do new. One of the proposals in the RFPs, the percentages for the downtown schematics were higher than out on the Greenfield site because it costs more to remodel and do stuff like that. So I mean, like 7.5% to 5.4%, I think, if I remember seeing on one thing, to engineer and draw this thing up for downtown versus out in the green space.
You brought up an interesting point a minute ago about closing Western Avenue. Not just to close it, but how much space would that provide to build on if that were closed and that became a building site?
Yeah,
It would be significant.
yeah, as I mentioned.
Because that's a fairly wide street, and that's a lot of open area,
Yeah.
and that could be built on.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, so if you do something downtown, the first level will be like Sallyport, intake, jails, sheriff stuff, and then the jail would be above that. But when I talked about this, I could see where you come in on Western from the west, that would be a garage door for the sheriff's department to drive in. It'd be a door on both sides. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but when I was thinking about this and talking about it, you could build that up, because water is an issue, so you could build it up there, you drive into the Sallyport, you go up, and once you come in the building, you can go back down. I envision a roundabout here, where you come around, you could go into the east side of that on Western Avenue there, so you don't have people driving straight through trying to ram into there, but there's architects and designers that can design that and look at that, but right now, they're looking at the parking lot across the street and the corridor connecting the two buildings. I don't know if that's something that they will even look at, or it hasn't been part of the discussion so far.
It's been brought up, it hasn't been one of the options that was developed.
Thank you.
So we will definitely make sure that this gets communicated. Yes, Tom?
I worked in a vertical prison in Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility. It's a 20-story building with 10 floors of inmate housing. What you mentioned earlier, you said they're changing the way they build prisons. They can't do the big dormitories because they have to have people in sections. The vertical works well for that because you have, he mentioned you needed more people to operate it, but you might need those people anyway, because if you have sex offenders on one part of a floor and so on and so forth, you can look at, is there an advantage or not? I don't know if there is. To a vertical prison compared to having it spread out all across town and out in the field trying to...
We heard about this a lot on Monday, actually, and they talked about how if you sprawl too far, your guys are running like it's like running a race. They're exhausted by the time they get to the cell. They got to catch their breath before they can do anything. If you go too high, you've got elevator issues that can take a while, and being with inmates in an elevator sometimes feels dicey. That's one of the sort of dangerous places to be. And elevators need maintenance. They're expensive. They don't always work. There's some safety issues there. Basically what it comes down to is you don't want to go too high and you don't want to go too wide. Finding something kind of moderate. And I think that the pods, I don't know if you all understand the pod system, but the way they design them now, imagine, like if you look at my hand, you've got a guard stationed here who has a direct line of sight to a whole floor here and then a whole floor below of inmates. You've got 2 floors. You can get 150 people that are, sort of like a pie, direct line of sight, and then you have one rover who's moving physically, one person who can see everybody and one person who's going around being present, right? If you had a pod like that, you've got basically 2 people that need to be staffing that all the time. If you've got what we have now, which is long corridors with cells coming off them, and the corridors are going every which way because you've added onto the building so many times, you have to just constantly walk. It's a 10-mile hike to do the required check-ins on all the patients in a shift, 10 miles. So that's very inefficient. The labor efficiency of the new pods is much better. And you can stack them. It does get expensive to build heavy enough to stack stuff that heavy. It's really massive construction. But heck, if you could do 2 pods and 1, I don't know, or just 2 pods, maybe that would be sufficient.
The pod style is what is preferred and what we're looking at. Do you work in a pod style now?
I don't work at all, I'm retired.
Okay.
But I know what you're talking about.
So what Kat mentioned earlier is, used to make, you could house 60 of them. So even when they started making the pods, they made them big, so you could put a lot of people in them, but because of the classification. So what we just seen then on Monday is there's smaller sections in that pod, so you can deal with the classifications a lot easier.
You're more likely to have, common rooms for 2 to 6 people rather than
20 to 30.
10 to 30,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
And when you're talking floors, just so everybody understands, like this room we're in here, maybe it'd be a little bit bigger. There's 2 floors in this room. It's not a floor and then another floor and another floor. The room is divided in half basically. So there's stairs going up and railing around. So you'll have cells up here and cells here, but it's all seen from that main control center right in the middle. And then there's, computer screens. I mean, in Green Lake, I give these people credit, I tell you guys, because the lighting, they just told us all Monday, the lighting's got to be just right on this side of the glass, on this side of the glass. You're looking at these monitors. I'm old and my eyes are terrible. And just being in and around that control center and operating all these doors and taking care of stuff, these people go through a lot of stuff. I got to give them credit because I couldn't do it. It's crazy. They got a lot of stuff to watch and take care of. But so that would be one, basically pod, if you will. And they make them different sizes, and then you put another one on top of that. So every one, has to have the staff.
Are you talking about, if we keep the old prison, are you talking about gutting it or tearing it down downtown? Tearing it down or keeping what's there and adding an addition? What are they talking about?
So in order to get to the courtrooms in any sort of reasonable way, because currently you have this crazy path to get there that they have to walk down, and there are real issues with it. To have a more direct route, they would have to build a new direct route and a new entrance into the courts. The old jail, we haven't really talked about what would be done with it. There hasn't been any direct, we're going to tear it down or we're going to abandon it. My sense is that it might continue to function in some way. We certainly need to keep it going while we're building. And it may be that parts of it that are still reasonably functional would continue to be used in some way.
We are talking about building a new jail.
We are talking about building an entirely
down.
new thing, separate from it,
Okay.
physically separate.
Thank
from
you,
it.
I'm sorry.
We're not building onto it. We're building, it would be separate, but it would be very close. It might be just feet away. Can I make a point about that? Because this is something that's not clear for me. If it stays downtown in the way the RFPs are done right now, it's for a whole new facility. But one of the problems that I became aware of during this whole process, and actually it didn't really hit me until my second jail tour, which was just about a month ago, we have a massive problem with our courts because the way they're situated, our courtrooms are situated like this, and then there's the corridor where the inmates are brought into the courts, and our judges and their staff are over here. And that is not a safe setup. And it's, the state, there is a state regulation about how they should be, and we've had a report on that, and we've done nothing about it. So I have heard nothing during this whole process about how we're going to solve that problem. My personal feeling is we have more citizens and more staff that are on that floor every day who we should be thinking about. And that's not been part of this, because even if we go out and build at the highway site, my impression is that we're going to continue to use our courts downtown for a significant period of time. So I think that's one of the major things that we just have not talked about or solved that problem. This is so complex, there's so many moving parts that, we don't have any idea what we're doing there.
Yeah, Mary's right. If you don't do a complete justice center out there at the new site where you can have everything there. I even asked early on when we talked about downtown where, you build new courthouses on top of the jail and on the pod system downtown where then they just go right up to the courthouse right up there. But then we still have the old building and what we deal with that. So I'm pretty sure that we only have one courtroom that is up to the standards that it needs to be. And we have 5 courtrooms, I believe, and
6.
1 family court.
1 family.
And only one of the courtrooms meets current standards. So yes, things will need to be addressed there, and maybe we would only have 4 instead of 5, if they get remodeled down there or something. But that's additional cost that if it gets built downtown needs to be discussed and looked at for the courts, because that's a major component of this justice system.
I'm just looking at the thing that was given to us by the group that worked with the ad hoc committee. And I'm realizing these are the options that we were presented. There were 5 of them, and none of them include the court work. They included a number of things, but not that. So that's not, the numbers that they gave us would be understating what we have to do, because we do agree that we have to do something. I don't think there's any disagreement about needing to do some renovations on the courts.
Yeah, I think that first one, the clear and accurate transfer, whether all this stuff, people aren't interested in every single detail, but they do want to know what's going on, and they don't want to feel that things are being put over on them.
Right.
And so as a citizen, I'm not a citizen of Ripon, but of the county, I want to know. You know, I own property in Beaver Dam, and they moved some fast things with that new AI center, and we didn't know. People aren't going to buy this unless they know it. So that's more important than knowing every detail.
Okay.
Is people like you put an ad thing in the paper. That was great because it explained both. All you weren't selling it. You were just saying this is what we're doing. And instead of somebody saying, "Oh, the sheriff or somebody else just wants to move ahead," we don't want to hear that. We want to know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, can you give me any feedback on how this has gone for you tonight? I mean, what do you?
Well, I'm asking you a lot of questions.
You're asking lots of questions, and I appreciate it. And what can I do? I mean, I'm happy to do this again. I'll do this as many times as people want to come. But what would be helpful to you? Yeah.
As you make decisions, or as you consider serious issues or these parts, as you consider them, transfer that information back to the public. Let them buy in to whatever it is you're doing. Don't be afraid that they're going to lean one way that isn't the way you want to go, or the other way that you're some way that you're not even considered. I would say just be clear, be accurate, be transparent, be, I don't know if you can say unbiased, because everybody has a bias. I lean this way, I lean that way. Give the people the facts. And let us buy into the decision making.
The simplest thing I can tell everybody here, and if anybody watches this down the road and stuff, is our county clerk just mentioned this the other day, and I mentioned it earlier, that everything's on the website, but you don't have to necessarily go look for stuff. You can actually sign up. So anytime something happens, you get an email, you get notified.
This is true, but I'm gonna put in a little plug for the general public here. It is very difficult to know what to make of those documents. I mean, they're highly technical, and until I go to the presentation and hear these guys talk about what they're doing, I don't know what the heck that means.
But some people do, and so
some people do, not many. I don't consider it's a really important thing, and we have to do it.
I'm not a
It's
computer guy, so I mean,
It's not enough. That's why we're here.
Question, you know, the atrophy of local media is part of the problem. Has the Fond du Lac Reporter even had a single article on this issue? I don't get it anymore because it was like 4 pages and mostly ads.
There's been 2 or 3 articles.
They
The
did?
reporter, for all intents and purposes, no
Yeah,
longer
so-
does local news.
I actually offered them my articles, and it was okay with the Ripon Commonwealth Press, and they never got back to me. They were going to get them for free, and they never even answered my email, so.
Now, I know Greg Stensland has had people on. I don't know about KFIZ.
Yeah, KFIS
But
kind of
anyway,
broke it, actually.
it's part of it is, part of the information problem is the lack of media.
Well, what I'm putting down here is that the atrophy of the local media means we need to do more.
Yeah.
We can't just rely on the local media to do it for us. We have to do things like this and then get the word out there.
I don't think you can depend on newspapers. I don't think the general population is reading newspapers anymore. They're getting it on the computer. So you have to find a way to put information out there on social media because that's where they're getting it. That's what I see.
Can I ask a question? Where do you all get your news?
Ripon Commonwealth.
The paper?
Or, yeah, in the Oshkosh Northwestern, and Madison State Journal, and the New York Times. But,
We subscribe.
but I didn't know about this meeting except through an organization that I belong to, the League of Women Voters, said, go to this meeting, this is an important meeting. But it wasn't in the local paper last week.
Well, it was in the paper. I read it.
In the Commonwealth? Oh, I missed it then.
It was easy to miss.
But I did find it on your
Look at there.
Facebook, Kat.
Okay.
So that's social media.
Okay.
When I worked, I listened to Greg Stensel, and because it was the only station that came into prison,
Yeah.
whatever. But I found that he was willing to bring anybody in about the subject. But it seems like sometimes one side was talking more than others. And I think it's important to know that he'll have you on, and like, have you been on there?
Yeah, I've been on there a couple times.
Yeah, I can't get it anymore where I live, so I don't know.
It's online, you can go listen.
Can you?
Does anybody listen to RPN? I was on RPN last week.
Is that Ripon?
1,600?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's Ripon, yes.
Okay. Anything else, Gary?
Well, I am getting the impression that regardless of what happens or where we go and so forth, we're really running up against the fact that the cost of things has just increased tremendously.
That's right.
That's
And, you know, we keep hearing, well, the inflation is only 2% or 3%. That
Not
just
for this.
doesn't correspond to
Not
people's
for this.
reality. Because, you know, it just doesn't feel like our wages are increasing as much as the cost of things.
Building lumber up
Building-
25%.
And so, you know, I don't have any solution to that. I mean, that's a real.
It is really hard. I mean, even if you were to say, let's do a third of that 400 million project, let's take it down to 125 million, that still puts us way high compared, I mean, it puts us right near the top of, you know, what other counties are doing. It doesn't make us worse than everybody else, but puts us right up there.
Are there any federal grants or anything that we can look for? Anything that would be helpful? Matching?
I presume that our people have looked into that. I don't know personally, but I know that our county executive did talk to people in the state legislature, and they're like, yeah, no, nothing there.
Cookie sales?
Bake sales?
Yeah,
I know it's a little bit off subject, but not, is, you know, I've heard how much money, state money is going to Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, because we don't legalize cannabis, marijuana, and tax the heck out of it. You know, you could do that, and even you could have a county tax on whatever dispensaries you had here in Fond du Lac County. You know, a long time ago, a couple of years ago, they were saying 36 million just to Illinois itself. You know, it takes an amount of lobbying to our state legislators, but, you know, if you're looking for money, maybe that's one place to think about.
You just tripped a gear that I thank you for not letting me forget about it. And I wish, you know, Marty, when I started back years ago and you were still there, that we would have created a resolution, and I will, as I'm standing here tonight, we move forward with this, I will ask to bring a resolution to the floor that any revenue that is generated from that jail gets put in a segregated account that is there to maintain, fix, repair, replace that jail in the future. Had we done that years ago when this other jail was done, and I mentioned that we were actually putting revenue back into the general fund, LB will always use it back, and if we would have segregated that and put that aside back then and put that in an account making some money, I don't care if it was only $5 million over the last 20 years. It would have been $5 million we could have used towards this project. And if we build a new jail, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to ask, I don't know if they'll do it, but I want to bring a resolution to the floor that once that loan and debt is serviced and paid off, any additional revenue that jail brings in gets segregated in a separate account that is only to be used for the jail operations, sheriff's department, in either fixing, repairing, or replace. Everybody builds something and they never put anything away to fix it down the road, including this building, you know, the library across the street. It'd be nice if a certain percentage of that was put away, but my God, if we're generating revenue for, I don't care if it's 8 years, that money should be put aside for that building and not be used for other stuff.
But Gary, you've run for office, you know what it's like to be an elected person. I mean, if you come up with a big surplus, people are gonna say, oh, they way overtaxed us. No, they took all this money from us 10 years ago.
All right, but before we go there, any other final closing thoughts of what would get you to yes? What do you need, whether it's about how we communicate or some aspect of this that you really want us to raise up? Yes?
There's too many ifs right now. Excuse my throat.
Too many what?
Too many ifs right now. You gotta get your numbers from the consultants.
Yep.
And all that kind of stuff, all your ducks in a row. Then you can make your decisions on how big you want to do this, and you need more than one idea.
Yeah.
In other words, have a small one, have a big one, but get the numbers down so people know what's going on. And then you can present it to the people and the people will understand what's going on. Because right now, this is a big if.
Yeah. Okay.
When you're looking at your ifs, look at all the unknowns, because I'm thinking now about what's going on right now in the city of Beaver Dam with this data center. And there were so many things that weren't presented that they didn't know, particularly the cost of the electricity and where that's going to go. So you almost, as a county board, need to think about, okay, what are some of the hidden costs or the hidden issues that we're not dealing with, and brainstorm that. Because I think we went to, and I'm speaking about what happened in Beaver Dam, we went to talks with the mayor of Beaver Dam, and on some of it, she was blindsided. They were presented this and they didn't think about all the ramifications. And I think people down the road will want to know those ramifications, and that's important to people.
Okay, anything else? Thank you so much for coming tonight. I really, really appreciate all your time.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Kat. Very well done.